Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Scottish Roadscast, an all-new podcast series from the Scottish Roads Archive. I'm Stuart Baird.
And I'm John Hassel. In this new Roadscast, we will be talking about all the roads, bridges and motorways in Scotland that were constructed from 1945 onwards. It's an absolutely massive subject we've got here, Stuart. In this very first episode, not only will tell you about some of the change that we've made here with the podcast, and you mentioned earlier before we even started about the logo. How good is the new logo?
Wonderful new logo.
Wonderful.
Familiar voices to some. We will have some listeners who've been here since the old days of the Glasgow Motorway Archive podcast. 55 episodes produced there over 4 years.
Yes.
But it was time for a wee change.
It was.
And the followers on social media will be aware that we recently rebranded as the Scottish Roads Archive, and there were a number of reasons for that.
Absolutely.
And that seemed like a really good moment to shake up things with the podcast. Sorry, Roadscast.
I was just about to interject there. That's right. Do you know something, Stuart? When we've done the Glasgow Motorway Archive podcast, as you say, hugely successful. Yeah. Often some of the best podcasts we've done were some of them outside of Glasgow, when we spoke about the Edinburgh City Bypass or the M9 or the M90. There's an opportunity here.
There is. It's a very good point. When we started off 11 years ago as Glasgow's Motorways, we focused entirely on Glasgow's motorways.
Yes.
But as things developed and we became Glasgow Motorway Archive and we started doing the podcast in 2018 and various other things, it was pretty obvious that people had an interest in parts of Scotland beyond Glasgow, because there's a lot of interesting features. And people drive a lot of these roads and have fond memories of them as they developed and as they were built. And like you say, we had some really popular podcasts from these areas.
Duncan McKnight has been a driving force in this as well. He has contributed with his A9 information and other things out with the field as well. So we do have more of a resource now than we did 4 years ago.
So I mean, if you went back 4 years ago, the entirety of our archive was based upon records from either the Glasgow motorway system or the Clydeside Expressway, some of the other expressways, local to that. In the last few years, we have built up a significant amount of material relating to routes like the A9, the major bridges. Remember Forth Road Bridge, Erskine Bridge, that's a bit outside Glasgow. The M74 all the way down to Gretna, Edinburgh road system as well. And
also up north, Inverness, Keswick and stuff like that.
Keswick, obviously a big one coming soon as well,
There are still a lot of gaps. One of the things I want to make a statement here about when we were doing the podcast, when we initially started out, there was this feeling I had we were the experts. But actually, a lot of people came forward with additional information, and we suddenly found as we moved that, especially in Ayrshire was a good example, where actually we don't know much about this, and we're talking about it, and then people are getting in touch, and then more of our name is getting out there, more stuff coming in. Now we're really at a point where, Stuart, can I safely say that we're probably the largest private archive of roads material in Scotland, and that needs to be shared.
We're almost at the stage where I would confidently sit here and say that we were the largest archive of roads and transportation material in Scotland. Because although some of the local history archives and Historic Environment Scotland and National Records for Scotland have some archive material on roads, they aren't huge collections. We're not far off being the definitive archive for roads in Scotland.
You're right, and it's coming in thick and fast.
And you know what? Some of these bodies are recognising that. Historic Environment Scotland, Transport Scotland, some of the local history archives, all very happy and keen to work with us on this material because we know it, we can identify it, we can help them with it.
There's definitely been a lot of that. Because we've travelled around. Our work does help as well, but with these things.
Now, and we made this point on social media, the Glasgow Motorway Collection is obviously a significant chunk of our archive. That doesn't disappear. There will still be a primary focus on the motorway system round about Glasgow with a smattering of other Scottish road stuff initially. Obviously, as that develops, we'll probably see more from across the country coming in. But I don't want people just thinking that the Glasgow motorway system is now just forgotten about and we've moved away from that. No, on the contrary, we will still be talking about that. And we'll still get a lot of new material to come.
Of course, and that's maybe a statement I'm going to point at some of our new listeners. Who've gone, Scottish Roads Archive, I don't live in the Glasgow area, but they might visit the site right now and go, ooh, very Glasgow-centric. It's because, well, that's where we started out.
Exactly.
And of course, I just want to reassure any long-time listeners from the Glasgow Motorway Archive podcast, we will still talk about Glasgow things. There's always going to be an opportunity to talk about the M77, Stuart.
Absolutely. You are absolutely right, and let's be honest, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
And some of the features that we had in the old podcast series, like asking for listener questions now and again, even sharing some of the items from the archive that we have,
or getting guests on.
Yeah, all these things will continue.
Yes,
all of these things will continue, and I hope actually we'll be able to encourage more people to contribute.
It has. It's certainly helped the evolution of the podcast and other things we should go and talk about and so on.
Yeah.
So, no, that's fantastic. We really patted ourselves on the back there. Yeah. In fairness, but
I think it's deserved.
It is deserved, but I do want to give credit to the people who listen to this as well, because see, if people didn't and they didn't contribute and they didn't give us the good reviews and everything, we wouldn't have carried on, probably, if we felt that people weren't enjoying this. So thank you very much to everyone. Thank you
to the 50-odd thousand people who downloaded our podcast last year.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people. And I hope that people across Scotland will find us and will see that if they have an interest in roads, not just the building of roads, the planning of roads, but actual driving on roads, because we will now talk about things like roadside features and people's memories of roads and things like that. It's not all just about the building of them and the planning of them and the civil engineering. It's about all aspects of it.
Absolutely.
The driving experience of it,
Yeah, we did. I mean, that was one we done with the North Coast 500, which was more of a kind of driving one, which went down quite well, I think. And regardless of your ideological stance, if you're against roads or you're really kind of for them, there'll be something in here for you, because we make it factual.
Exactly.
With a healthy dose of our opinions as well, but they're just our opinions.
Absolutely. Yep.
So that's it.
Precisely.
Okay. Yes. So episode 1 of the Roadscast. What are we going to talk about? I'll tell you, Stuart. So I thought the best way to kick off this debut episode would be to talk about the trunk roads in Scotland. All the trunk roads. Now, for anyone worrying we're going to be sitting here for 3 hours, no, we're not. No, it will be quite a brief overview, and we'll have some back and forward about this stuff, and then finish at the end with some news on things. Yeah. But I've spent a bit of time looking over how many trunk roads are in Scotland, and I was actually quite surprised.
I have a question.
Already? I barely started.
Yeah, I know, but I need to ask this question because there will be people listening who will be saying, what the hell's a trunk road? So tell me, John, what is a trunk road? What makes it different to any kind of road?
Okay, so this is my definition that I've got here, which I believe is correct. It is a road of strategic importance that is managed, maintained, and funded by the Scottish Government.
Correct.
For Scotland.
Yes. And all motorways in Scotland are trunk roads.
That's right.
That's not the case across the UK.
No, because they have some motorways in England. Yeah. With the local authority does maintain them.
It was the case in Scotland until 1996.
That's right, because Glasgow.
Yes, but not anymore. So if you're on a motorway in Scotland, it's a government-maintained road.
Yes.
But there are a whole raft of A roads, some of which I don't even know, and you're going to give us an overview of what the...
I'm trying to hide this list from you, but I know you've got it here as well. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to roll some numbers out. So in total... And I've gone for individual routes. So there's your motorways and the A roads and so on, stuff like that. There are 54 trunk roads in Scotland.
That's more than I would have thought.
42 of which are A roads and 12 are motorways.
Just checking your numbers here.
Oh, don't worry, Stuart. As no sooner has the word left my lips that somebody will be writing in and going, actually, that is actually a separate road or something like that.
This looks like a pretty accurate list to me, and it's way more than I thought. And looking at that list, I would have been like, yeah, there's not 54 there, but there is. You're absolutely right.
No, my sources there, I did have a look myself, but I also did look on Transport Scotland's website. They have a lovely comprehensive list of this that made things quite kind of simple for me looking at the research from this. So, where to start? Okay, can we start at number 1?
Start with the motorways.
You want to start with the motorways first?
Yeah. Of
course.
Well,
we'll start with the motorways, and then we'll see if we can get round to some A roads.
If it's about strategic importance, then the motorways tend to be the most strategically important.
Then it's the M8.
Yeah.
Okay, so the M8 is a trunk road. It's a motorway.
Yeah.
Now, Stuart, some questions I'll put to you, maybe some opinions you've got on some of these things. So first of all, have you ever driven the M8?
Yeah. I wish I could say no to that. Yes, frequently.
End to end.
End to end, many times.
So the M8, main road between Glasgow and Edinburgh. Massive artery between our two major cities.
Our most important motorway, basically. Certainly our busiest.
Yes, it is our busiest.
Yeah.
I would say. I mean, some might argue the 74 is M74 might be more important because it's strategic link to the rest of the United Kingdom.
Yeah, So the M8 has a different sort of type of importance.
Yeah,
to
links our two cities, and we have the M8 corridor. I stay along the M8 corridor. It's a vital kind of artery, and it runs all the way from Edinburgh all the way out to just past Bishopton, shy of Langbank at West Ferry. It's got, the junctions go from 1 to 31. There's actually more than 31 junctions if you count the A ones, but there you go. So, brief overview of the M8, but you will have heard so much about the M8 if you have listened to our previous podcasts. Now, we spoke about another motorway very quickly there, the M74.
Yes, and the A74M.
Yes, so we'll do two for the price of one here. Mm-hmm. Okay, so M74 and A74M. Most of the time people just refer to these as one route, though.
Yeah, and the junction numbers obviously confirm that is a single route. Very important, as you said, for trade purposes. 80%, I think, of all cross-border traffic from between Scotland and England uses the M74 and the A74M.
Yeah.
Clearly very important. And a key part of the Glasgow urban motorway system at its northern end.
Yes. A combined length of these ones does actually make up our longest route as well.
Yeah.
Look at these now. Let's preempt the point. People go, well, why isn't it just all M74?
Oh, well, we'll cover that in a future podcast. If people really want to know the answer, if they check out the M74 page on the website, scottishrroadsarchive.org/M74. Mm-hmm. All the information you need on that is there.
Wonderful use of plugging the website there, Stuart. I was just going to simply give the good listeners the answer, but you're like, no, do your homework.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. We're not making it that easy for people.
Anyone listening in the car is like, oh, I've got to pull over now. Yeah. Right, okay. So another really important motorway, the M73. Mm-hmm. I call it the Glasgow Eastern Bypass. Mm-hmm. You disagree, you call it the Lanarkshire Bypass.
It's the Lanarkshire Western Bypass.
Lanarkshire Western Bypass. So this links three really important roads. It's not very long.
No.
I wouldn't say it's forgotten, but it's...
No. This is a motorway that has really grown in importance in the last decade because of the completion of the M80, the completion of the M74, and the upgrade of the M8 have all increased the importance of the M73.
Absolutely.
Where before you were just basically running along a 5-mile slip road between the M74 and the A80 with a reconnection at Bailston, it's now a major strategic link between these three major routes. And if it wasn't there, we would suffer.
Of course, everyone would be going through Glasgow or going down the A73.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, really important road. You've also mentioned the M80. Mm-hmm. M80, the gateway to the north from Glasgow. Yep. Starting in Glasgow, down at the M8 at Provan, and going all the way up to, past Hags and everything, and it goes all the way up to where it meets the M9 at Bannockburn.
Yeah. Yep.
What do you think of it?
It's a road I don't mind too much. It's slightly under-engineered. Is that the right phrase? In the sense that it doesn't have enough lanes in places because of the amount of traffic that uses it, which we will discuss in future when we get to our M80 podcast. Absolutely. I think it's adequate. It's probably a good description for it. Adequate.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who use that every day. I certainly have many memories of the M80 going north back to where I hail from, taking that route. But yeah, different characteristics. Urban in the beginning. Some newer sections built in 2011, which...
quite an interesting one for us because it's got a section that was built in the 70s, so back in that original heyday for motorway building. We've got a 90s scheme in there, so the second heyday for road building, a Strathclyde region scheme, and then the big long section in the middle, a modern scheme.
Yeah.
And there's real differences from the engineering point of view for each of those three sections, and it's fascinating to compare them against one another.
Of course.
So, it's really interesting. It's an interesting route from that point of view, a bit like another major Glasgow motorway, the M77.
Yes. I mentioned it early on.
Yeah.
The gateway to Ayrshire. Obviously very urban in the start of this, going through to like Junction 4 and then continuing, got the newer section goes over the Fenwick Moor down to the Meiklewood interchange just north of Kilmarnock on there. So M77, very busy road, Stuart. It's often one we have moaned about being stuck on. But we've spoken about it in the past and we will speak about it again.
Most definitely.
So what are the major ones have we got, Stuart?
Well, in terms of major ones, I would say there's probably two more major ones.
Okay. Right, well, okay. I'm just wondering if you'll leave out one of my favourite ones here, but what ones do you think?
In terms of the major ones, I would say the M9 and the M90.
Good, you mentioned M90, that's fine. Duncan and I are happy.
The M90 is a decent motorway. I did a bit of research on that recently. I have a newfound interest in that route. The development of it was very interesting. Again, from an engineering point of view, lots of different features depending on when the section was constructed. Most recent bit, I say the most recent bit of the original M90 north of the Forfar Bridge, the 1980 section, when you compare that with the section 1964 for the Forfar Bridge, very different. And then the bits in the middle had interesting stories behind them as well.
And it's got some terrific features. Those bends at the top, and you've got Craig End interchange as well, which is terrific. No, and of course now parts of the M90 are incorporated into Queensferry Crossing as well. So loads of features on it to talk about.
The M9.
The M9. Often I call it Scotland's M40. Because the M9, and it's no disrespect to it, I do find it in some ways maybe a bit boring.
Featureless.
But it does a very important job. And I think without the M9, the M8 would suffer even more. We do have, in an essence, a kind of a luxury of two, I wouldn't say roughly parallel, but going to similar places in terms of Edinburgh. But the M9 is important, albeit maybe not as busy as the M8.
A key part of the Central Scotland motorway system.
Of course. So there's another little motorway that links M9 and M80. You like it?
Yeah, the M876.
Yes, that's right.
Another interesting motorway that began its life as an A-road bypass.
That's
so
right.
There was a section, the western section was the A876. Then upgraded to motorway in 1974 as part of the Stirling Bypass and various other bits and bobs.
Well remembered.
And then the eastern section came along in 1980 as part of the final section of the M9. So it's a motorway that kind of exists because it needs to link two more important routes, but it has one or two interesting features, particularly the open spandrel accommodation arch bridge.
The high one.
Sort of midway along. That's pretty interesting. Otherwise, it's fairly featureless as well.
Fairly short as well, isn't it?
Had a wee extension back in 2008 when the Clackmannanshire Bridge was finished, when they extended it by a junction, if you remember.
They went up to Bowtrees. They grade separated Bowtrees, didn't they? So that's it. The last of the prefixed M motorways is the M898, which is one of the shortest motorways in the UK. That basically is the Erskine Bridge South approach roads.
Exactly. Yeah, another important route in the sense that we need it to connect to the Erskine Bridge.
Deserving of its own number, though? Surely it's just a spur.
It needed to have a number, I suppose, in the sense that it continued across the bridge as an A road, so it made sense, rather than being an M8 spur, to have its own number. But is it really deserving of it? It's one of these ones that's up for debate. We will have a podcast on that road at some point.
Probably going to get angry letters to this podcast / roadcast when we're done. But no, that's a fair point. So now we go on to, just quickly on to motorways with an A prefix. So these are, for example, the A823M.
Yes.
known as the Petrevie Spur up at Marston, that goes off from Junction 2 towards Dunfermline.
Slightly longer than the M898, I believe.
Yes, a little bit, tiny little bit, to be honest with you. Very unbuilt.
Yes.
In sections there. The road I've spent a lot of time working on, and I grew quite fond of in a way, and it serves an important purpose.
Yeah, it does. You're right. It does. It's a fairly important route there.
Another one, well, we spoke about the A74M, that quickly ticks off, and there is a little tiny secret motorway we have, which is the A8M.
Oh yeah, the interesting one, yeah.
The Swinton Spur, which we had a sign for, and then the sign came down, but in all legal sense, it does exist as the A8M.
It does, it exists as a legal entity between Baillieston Roundabout and Swinton Roundabout. In fact, the entirety of Baillieston Roundabout is A8M. Because it's under motorway restrictions.
Because you can only get to and from it from motorways.
Exactly. So yeah, that is an interesting one. Yeah,
there's people who probably didn't know that, but there you go. You're now, driving on it.
There's an interesting one here that you've not included, and I'm kind of glad you haven't, because I don't believe it exists. But there's many people out there that say it does, and that would be the A92M. But I don't think that actually exists. That's a sabre argument that we don't want to cover here.
It's never referred to as that. Very, very early documents I've come across have mentioned things like M92,
right?
But it never came to be. This of course was the at the moment it's Junction 2A of the M90, which is known as the Crossgate Spur or Canby Spur.
So the spur itself is under the legal aspects of the M90. Yeah, exactly.
And I spoke to one of the original contractors who worked for Morrison's, and he said that's all we ever referred it to.
You heard it here first.
But people are allowed to dream. I mean, there are some anomalies that do exist elsewhere in the United Kingdom, but as you say, it's under M90. Right, motorways covered. That's done. We're fairly getting through them. We'll just get on to the 42A roads now.
My goodness.
So, as I said earlier, the A1. Now, the A1, you mentioned the A1. You think of that long road in England that's got good bits and it's got bad bits. But we have A1 in Scotland. It runs from Berwick and it goes all the way into Edinburgh.
Yeah.
We have had a pretty extensive podcast on this in the past, haven't we?
Yes, and we will do again because we're always learning new stuff. So
there's still a few gaps in the knowledge in some of these sections, but the A1, again, a route if you need to get to the northeast of England, it's perfectly adequate.
Oh yeah,
it'd be nice to have some more dual carriageway, but hey,
my opinion of the A1 has always been that the Scottish side of the route is not the problem. It's when you get into those long, monotonous sections, single carriageway sections north of Newcastle, Alnwick and places like that. That's
fortunately national highways are finally doing something about it. But no, you're right. The Scottish section actually has more sections of it dualled.
Yeah.
So there we go. You want to know another good borders trunk road? I don't know if you knew this was a trunk road, Stuart. Of course you did.
Surprise me.
The A68.
An interesting route. I quite like the A68.
Yes.
But I think the only reason I like it is because it had so much improvement during the 1990s. You know, remember they straightened out a lot of the bends. They widened a lot of sections of it to include hard strips. I think if you were driving the A68 back in the 1970s, I think it would have been a very different beast to what it is now.
Absolutely. I mean, it's got the Dalkeith Bypass as well, which I think they refer to as Dalkeith Northern Bypass.
That's right, yep.
It's got some sections actually for a single carriageway road. I mean, it's all entirely single carriageway. Has great separated junctions on those newer sections. Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of the A68. It's my preferred route to the northeast of England.
I would back you up on that one. Yeah, I know it has a neighbour in that part of the world as well, which is not so good.
Yes, just on the A68, this is something I would like to cover a bit more of at some point in the future. So expect a Roadscast about that.
Not something we've really spoken about before, so by all means.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm sure there are people out there who'd love to contribute to that.
We know that at one point in the 1990s they were actively considering dualling.
Yes,
long sections of the A68.
I've seen plans for a Jedburgh bypass.
Yeah. We have some slides that have the impressions of the Jedburgh bypass drawn by Alexander.
Again, another example of something we've had for years, and we're like, we just need the platform to share this. So, as A68 fans right now hopping up and down in anticipation,
I'm sure they are, John.
Do you know about a little road called the Melrose Bypass?
Yes, this is a road that I like quite a bit. This is the one that's partially constructed on an old railway line.
Yeah.
It has a couple of very impressive structures on it.
Was it built in the 80s?
Yes, I believe so.
80s and 90s?
Was it not done in two sections? One section was done much earlier and then another bit came a bit later.
Has it got a really good bridge on it as well?
Yes, Gala Footbridge. Nice high one, good view, Gala Shields and that whole valley.
And what's its number?
That would be the A6091.
Well done, that's fine. Yeah, A6091, also known as Melrose Bypass. Yep. That links the A68 also to the trunked part of the A7.
Yes.
Now
that's right. Yeah, pre-1996, A7 was entirely trunk. So all the way from Edinburgh City Bypass all the way down to
the border
to Langham, basically was trunk. But in 1996, when we had all the changes, they terminated, you could say, the trunk section at the A6091.
Yeah, that's right. So the trunk section of the A7 is actually really only its southern part.
Yes.
A7, very beautiful scenery.
Yeah.
Not a fast road, though.
Not a road you would choose if you were trying to get anywhere quickly.
It's quite a lot of towns on the way. But I think it's a beautiful corridor.
It's a nice road. There's a lot of nice features along it.
You've done a bit of work out there, didn't you?
I've done a bit of work on that, but frustrating if you get stuck behind a tractor or some other agricultural vehicle.
This is going to be the single carriageway problems, aren't they, of many roads that we're going to talk about. But no, the A7, I actually don't know much about it. So again, that's going to be another treasure trove of information if we can find out stuff.
Yeah.
Now, we do mention, of course, I mentioned earlier, roads post 1945. Now, all these roads, in the case of the A7, was around, even prior to then.
Yeah.
So it is just trying to find that information.
Lots of them have had post-war improvements.
Yes.
Like the A68, as we mentioned. A7's had a few improvements as well. In fact, we'll obviously cover the non-trunk section of the A7, and that would let us talk about the Dalkeith Western Bypass.
Okay. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's not just trunk roads we're going to be talking about in the future, but for this one, we'll stick to that. Let's talk about one more road in the kind of borders of that southeast part of England, southeast part of Scotland. Apologies. So that is the A702.
Yes, the Edinburgh to Biggar.
I have never driven this road in its entire length, and it is one of the things that really bugs me. I've been on bits of it.
I'm disappointed in you for admitting that. It's a very impressive road. It cuts the corner. If you're coming from Carlisle and you're going to Edinburgh, it's a good way of cutting the corner. Few long straight sections where there's good overtaking opportunities if you need them. However, if you get stuck behind one or two trucks, it can be slow going. And there's a few towns along the road as well, thinking about Biggar in particular. It's obviously the biggest one, where you're running right through the main street there.
Yeah.
And that can be quite busy, but it's an impressive wee road. We know there was a number of improvements there in the early 70s. The entire southern section, where it crosses the Clyde, that was all redone just around about the time the A74 was dualled in that location.
That's right, because it has kind of similar features when you're down there. That's the section I've used a bit more of, but no. That's on my bucket list, so to speak. So let's skip to the other side of the M74.
Okay.
Have you ever driven the A701?
Another good road for cutting the corner. So yeah, if you're coming from Glasgow going to Dumfries, a wonderful road for coming off Junction 15, Moffat, M74 right off there, straight down all the way down to Dumfries, long straight sections, a couple of very fast sections in that road when it's quiet as well, scary, so I've seen on many occasions, but let down by the narrow bridge halfway along with the traffic lights.
Yes.
Yeah, St Anne's
Bridge, that's what it is. Cold road in the winter as well, just be careful on that.
Yeah.
So that of course leads you to the A75. Now, the A75, really important road in Scotland, but we've never had a chance to really talk about because we haven't spoken about any roads in Dumfries and Galloway on the erstwhile Glasgow Motorway Archive podcast. But now that this is the roadcast, the reins have been kind of let loose that we can talk about such a thing. So, Stuart, are you an A75 expert?
No.
Well, you're going to be in the future because we will find out more about this road that goes all the way from Stranraer right to Gretna. We
have a number of our records in the archive relating to sections of this. Castle Douglas section, we've got some photos there. Some of the other bypasses that were built in the 80s and 90s, we've got some records relating to those schemes as well. We know some of the big consultants were involved. I think Babty had some involvement in some of the A75 stuff. And then we had more recent schemes like the Dunragit bypass at the Stranraer end where they took out the very low bridge that was on the old road and bypassed that. We've got some detail on that as well.
And he says he's not an expert and he has all these nuggets for us. I wasn't expecting you to, but I was aware we did have some stuff, but you've clearly looked at it in some detail. I see you've shared that.
And it's got a dual carriageway section at its far end as well where it meets the M74.
It does.
Yeah.
Does. So going to Stranraer, that is where the A77 and the A75 kind of, I'd say, almost meet there. There is a small trunk road down there, which kind of cuts the corner, but the A77 being kind of the main road going all the way up to Kilmarnock and back down to Stranraer. A really long road, and we drove this road a while ago, and I actually really quite enjoyed it. I
love the 77, and it's very interesting. There's a lot of stuff to see, particularly where the road hugs the coast. You know, south of Turnberry, where you come right back to the coast.
Yeah, we got some cracking photos there.
Yep, we really did. And there's some other sections. It pulls inland again as you head south, past Girvan, and there's some really interesting features on that section as well before you eventually get back to the coast at the ferry terminal at Cairnryan.
That's right, and includes like the Air bypass and all these things as well.
Air bypass built in the 60s. So lots to talk about there. The dual carriageway sections north of Ayr, also very interesting.
Bypass, we have touched on that before.
Prestwick bypass. Yeah, there's plenty to talk about on the Ayrshire side of things as well. And there's been lots of improvements in the A77 south of Ayr over the last 20 years as well, with the overtaking opportunities.
Incredibly recent one. Would you like to know the breaking news on the A77?
You go right ahead.
I can't believe you don't know this. But this is the long-awaited A77 Mabel Bypass. So that officially opened. I've got it kind of dated here from the 31st of January.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's not one I've driven yet. We'll need to try and get down at some point.
There is still, this is one of these things, these opening dates. There's still speed restrictions and...
finishing works
going on at the moment. So that was completed. I think it was a cost of like £29 million, but the Mabel Bypass is now open.
That's one of those interesting schemes that long-term listeners will know John and I like to talk about, where it's a scheme that's existed in documents for 50 years longer in some cases. So Mabel, Rye, towns like that have been bypassed very recently have had proposals for bypasses for a very long time, and they make for an interesting chat and an interesting discussion when we have podcasts on those. So we will definitely have them at one point. That is another point. I mean, we also, as much as we talk about the built roads that we have, we also talk about unbuilt schemes and proposals that never came to anything. We probably could have a podcast series just talking about unbuilt bypasses.
Absolutely. There are loads of them, as there have been changes in local government and things like that. These things get shelved. Go quite far with their planning before getting cancelled as well. So while we're in Ayrshire, we'll pick one more Ayrshire road, A78.
A78, another interesting route. So where's that from? That's Moncton at Prestwick Airport, all the way up to
the Bullring.
Yep.
Bullring roundabout.
Of course, all the way up. Of course.
So I love the southern sections of this because it's one of the only examples. Actually, A78 has this feature about it where it's the only section of dual 3-lane all-purpose road in a kind of a motorway configuration or rural. So it does have dual 3 lanes on the Irvine Bypass by Warwick's.
Very true. Yep.
Very, very cool.
And again, some very interesting sections north of there through Weems Bay, Largs, Seamill, heading down the coast.
Quite scenic. And so and then it becomes more urban. You've got the dual carriageway at the old IBM plant, Smago Valley.
Just one Ayrshire one, Dumfries and Galloway one. You did mention the one that cuts the corner down at Stranraer, but we never gave the number, the A751.
Thank you very much.
Just well remember. If somebody points that out.
Yes, the A751, because this was one I only learned about. I was like, oh, hold on a minute, what's this?
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, yeah, this is Trunk Road.
Yeah, that's kind of where they stack the trucks when there's issues with the ferries and stuff like that,
So there we go. It's the little ones that count. So, no, A78. So why don't we look further north? Now, what grander A road is there for Scotland than the A9?
Depends who you ask.
Well, it's certainly very high profile. It's a road that's had a lot of improvements over the years. Duncan has spoken at length about this. We're hoping to have a really good page on the A9 coming out on the website. Obviously, starting its kind of journey, I suppose, if you say the start all the way down near Falkirk and going all the way up, and it actually finishes at Scrabster.
Scotland's longest trunk road, I believe.
Yes, it is. It's quite a lot of it becoming dual. I mean, the sections that we look now between, where are we going? So we're going from kind of like from Dunblane all the way to Perth, dual carriageway, and the dual carriageway is creeping northwards as the really high profile kind of project of the A9 dualling continues with the next section hopefully starting, I believe, further on the end of this year or next year.
Yeah, so, it looks like it, yeah. Yep,
something. So the A9, really, really important. We're not glossing over it. We will come back and talk about the A9 again, but we have a fantastic podcast. I hope you haven't deleted, Stuart. It is still there about the A9.
All the old podcasts can still be found from the last couple of years.
Right,
so,
that's good. In case anybody wants to know about that. So that's another one there. So when you're on the A9, you get up by Aviemore, and there's a junction for a great trunk road that I've never even mentioned.
Okay.
Called the A95. The A95 runs from, the trunk section of that runs from the A9 all the way through to Keith. Goes basically through Speyside.
Yeah.
The A95. Important road, but I grew up alongside this road for a large part of my life. And so it's got something kind of special in my heart. I have driven it many, many times. When I very first got behind the wheel of a car, when I was learning to drive, I pulled out onto the A95. It was the first bit of asphalt that I drove on as a driver, so it's important to me. However, criminally, I've not done too much research on it, and that is going to be a project that I want to look at.
It's not a road I know a great deal about either, but having driven some of it with you, I did find it really quite an interesting looking road.
It was, yeah, it was. Sections of A95 beyond Keith, leading up to the A98 are not trunk though. So, other roads in this area?
Yeah, what else have we got up in that part of the world? We've got the A93, no?
Oh, you mentioned A93, but I'm going to have to put the klaxon on for that one.
Okay.
That's not a trunk road, Stuart.
Sorry.
But Do you know what? Just speaking about this, we will talk about roads that aren't trunk roads because the A93 is cool. Yeah. I don't know if you've driven up the Braemar Way before, yes, and so it's if you've got some extra time and you head north, it's really good. Mm-hmm. So A96, this is a road you'd never actually driven into until a few years ago before I decided to drag you up there.
Yeah, very true.
Bonk you in the passenger seat and say, right, we're going from Aberdeen to Inverness.
Yep.
A96, what did you think of it?
Oh, that was an interesting road, wasn't it? When you start at the Aberdeen Bypass and then you're heading west, you get that long section of dual carriageway.
With all the roundabouts on it.
Yep, quite fast moving. Quite straight in places, if I remember rightly. And then all of a sudden you're just chucked onto this rural road that,
in Aberdeenshire, which is some debate about the quieter sections.
But some interesting bypasses between there and Inverness.
Huntly.
Yep.
Well, you've got Inverurie first.
Fochabers,
that's the one that came later. Beautiful bypass they've made.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, the current plans that they have for the A96 involve kind of using that corridor again. Mm-hmm. This is a road that they're looking at dualling entirely, which they've pledged to do, which is a massive project. Mm-hmm. But I've used the A96 a lot. It's very, very busy, but it also lacks bypasses in key areas such as Nairn and also in Elgin and Keith. Yeah. Don't forget Keith. So the A96 really an important road between Inverness and Aberdeen and all the towns that come between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
pretty cool.
I mentioned the Aberdeen Bypass.
Yes, you did.
What number does that have?
So that actually has two numbers. A90 is the number it has, but it does actually have what they call the southern leg that goes off to Charleston, which is the A956.
Ah, who knew?
Who knew? I know, because they couldn't make it all the way around, because actually what happened up there is, I'll move on to talking about the A92, is that the old parts of the A90 that went through Aberdeen are called now A92.
Yeah.
They actually used to be called A92 before they built the A90. Uh-huh. The A90 is actually more of a recent road in these parts anyway, with all the upgrades they've done in the late 1980s and 1990s between Dundee and Aberdeen.
It made sense when you think, I know at the time they were looking to have a single consistent route number from the south all the way up to Aberdeen when they dualled it, as you say. Yeah. So to have M90 then become A90, it made sense, didn't rather have A85 and then A92 and there was other numbers as well, was there?
Yeah, yes, it did. One of the things about the road, although it came with some of the later improvements, it was one of my preferred ways of getting from the north of Scotland down to the southeast of Scotland.
Yeah.
Not southeast England, as I made the mistake. I'm not driving to Kent, but I always found that preferred it going that way. Now with the Aberdeen Bypass, it's good, but I no longer use it because it's full of average speed cameras now.
Yeah.
So
why would that be a problem, John?
No, it just I don't have cruise control in the car, and it means I'm sitting there watching the speedo all the time. I need to buy a car with cruise control so I can get back on the A90. To be honest with you,
okay.
A road that has actually had some poor road safety figures that necessitated these cameras, but you know another hero that saved the day: improvements to the A9.
Yeah.
Which has meant I've started to take the A9 more regularly going up there.
Lots of recent improvements to the A90 that we'll be able to talk about, thinking about like the Brecon Bypass and places like that. Tons of things you can talk about. Aberdeen Bypass.
Absolutely. And they're doing junction. There's the job at Lawrence Kirk that they're going ahead with now, putting the flyover in, removing some of those junctions. They've done the Balmony to Tippety dualling, which was north of the AWPR, Aberdeen Bypass route. Yeah. So if you're going up to Ellen, that's even quicker.
You haven't really mentioned Northwest Scotland. What have we got up there?
What's the big one for the Northwest?
Has to be the A82.
It has to be the A82, yeah.
So from Erskine Bridge all the way to Inverness. As a trunk road section anyway.
As it functions, don't like it.
What? How can you not like the A82?
I love the way it looks. I think it's beautiful. You're always going somewhere nice when you're going on the A82.
Yep.
But I think the sections up by Tarbet are blooming awful.
The last sections, the last unimproved sections.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. And I came down for this... Once I've nearly been taken out by a blooming lorry on it.
Yeah.
And this, the other time I came down there, it was absolutely belting it down with the rain. It was smashing it down.
Yeah.
And with it being narrow and loads of tourist traffic and stuff like that, I did not like it one bit.
You do need to be careful on that road.
My dad had always said to me, a good thing with the 82 is if the weather's bad on the A9, it can be a good alternative, but it is a lot slower.
Yeah.
But Glencoe section.
Yep.
Absolutely lovely. I don't mind the section by Loch Ness. I don't know what you think of that. It's a bit windy. It's kind of be quite busy.
Not much to see. But you've got some nice features bridges-wise. You get Ballachulish bridge.
Oh, yes. That is very good, actually. That is really, really good. A little trunk road on my list here, because this is the A828, and that is the Connell to South Ballachulish trunk road.
Linking two very nice bridges. From Connell Bridge to Ballachulish, yeah.
Have you been on it?
Yes, I have actually, yeah. It is a nice stretch.
We're getting into that part of the country where the roads, they genuinely offer some beautiful scenery.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yep. And that makes me think A87, because that's a stunning road as well, onto Skye.
Yes.
Although there are long, monotonous sections of that road as well.
Is the Skye Bridge part of that road?
Yes, it is. It goes all the way to Portree, the A87.
Yeah.
You know, so.
When was the last time you were up there?
2013, I think.
Oh, I have never. Do you know, I've been driven before, but the last time I went to Skye, it wasn't a bridge.
Oh, right.
I'm
okay,
showing my age. Yeah, and I do need to get up there to go and have a look at that. So there's roads really, a lot of these ones I've never even explored.
Yeah.
Sticking with this part of the 85. This is a road we've been on quite a bit when we've gone to go hill walking and stuff like that. Quite recently got average speed cameras, hasn't it?
At the section from Tyndrum to...
is it Crieff or
Dalmally?
Dalmally.
Yeah, on the 85 there's a section there now that's got average speed cameras. Because of that, again, because of the motorcycles basically misbehaving.
Well, that's us lost all our motorcycle listeners. I do apologise. No. I would do it as a poor safety record. On those things too.
And that's the road to Oban from Cranelarich, and then the A84. Does the A84 come off of that one? Goes down through Callander, and
that's the one that goes through Callander. Yeah. On those ones. People will correct us if we're wrong, so we really shouldn't worry too much about it. Now, here's a cool road. I believe it's the A835. This is the road that goes from Tor Roundabout to Ullapool.
Oh, that's a good road. Yeah.
I remember this as a kid, always going up to Ullapool and down that way. The sections nearer to Tor are not so great, but in terms of how nice they look, but it does really kind of open out, and it does look quite nice as you get towards the top. Do you know it leads to one of the shortest trunk roads in Scotland?
Really?
Yeah. I'll talk, just chuck some facts in here to break up the monotony of our list, right? The A893 in Ullapool, it's also called Shore Road, is only about 0.3 of a mile long.
Interesting.
Yeah. I believe that the shortest trunk road we have is the A7071, which links Bothwell to the Wraith interchange.
So from the B7071 Bothwell Road at Bothwell Bridge down to Wraith.
Yeah. I've got a little story about it. I many years ago now, when that opened as part of the improvements, I remember being tasked with putting the sign up for the maintenance of it. And I remember, we got to have this sign just for this. Yes, we do. It's in the contract. And to this day, that sign is there. So when you see this A7071 and maintained, that was me. So there you go.
Thank you for that useful fact, John.
Just patting myself on the back. Anyway, anything else interesting? Well, there is, every road in the northwest is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say it is. And I mean, there are some interesting A roads down here as well. I mean, thinking about trunk roads in the west of Scotland, we've still got an A8 in two distinct sections. There's a section in Lanarkshire and a section in Inverclyde.
Yes, there are. Yeah, and we have touched on it in the. No, we have had podcasts to talk about it, and also the A725, which is the Belsill Bypass, East Kilbride Expressway, and stuff like that.
And A726, Glasgow Southern Orbital.
Yes. Which we have spoken about a bit as well.
Yep.
You know, another trunk road, despite its white signs, but it is there. I never realised this. When making the list, Stuart, the A99 comes up as a trunk road.
Yes, it's up to Wick.
To Wick, our trunk.
Yeah, and that was the original A9.
It was.
The A9 was moved at some point. Yeah.
1996 or 1997.
As well?
When they reorganised all these trunk roads and stuff like that. This is where I expect Duncan to come booming through the door now and go, actually, it was precisely this date and this time. And
And the A9 now goes to Thurso, doesn't it?
Yes, that's Scrabster.
Yeah. Scrabster, okay.
As, again, Duncan will quickly correct you on if you say Thurso.
That's why we have experts who look to these remote parts of the world for us.
It is good. It saves us so much in fuel, doesn't it?
Yes.
Right, one more road, and then I'm going to maybe move on to some facts. Just looking in other parts of the country that we've got here. Oh, here's one. I love some of the names that they've given this. We've got one here, the A889.
The A889. Is that not that road in Livingston that runs down the dual carriageway from M8
That's
down
the
to...
899. This is the A889. Okay. I know, tongue twister. I don't think you've driven this, right? But this is a road that goes from Dalwhinnie to Lagan Bridge, right? And it's the one that kind of cuts the corner from the A9. You go off at Dalwhinnie. I don't know if you've been to that one.
Oh, is this the one that takes you across to the one that goes across to Fort William?
Yes.
At Spean Bridge?
Yes.
I think I might have driven that one, actually. The one I haven't driven... There's another one like this over the western side that goes from the A82 to the A87.
Yeah.
I haven't driven that one. Is that a trunk road? Is that on your list? Oh.
Maybe.
I don't know. I can't see it here.
That's some bedtime reading for you there, Stuart. So you've got that there. So no, there is. So like I said, 42 A roads can't possibly sit and cover all of these in one podcast. No. But it's going to give all you guys listening a bit of a taster of what we're going to dive into and look up. If any of these trunk roads that we've mentioned or not mentioned that you'd like to hear about, us to prioritise, please get in touch. Let us know. Do you live on one of them? Do you use one of them? Are we wrong about this? Or is there maybe something else we could elaborate on? Please let us know. Yeah, and we would like to hear your thoughts on each of the podcasts that we're putting out now as well. So, when we post a thread, when it's available and it's online on the social media, whatever, please feel free to leave comments below, letting us know what you think of the episode, any suggestions, all that sort of thing. Yeah. And, okay, I'm done with my list. Why don't we get some little facts? Yeah, go for it. About things. Okay. Did you know that the A96 is 101 miles long? No, I can't say I did, actually. Makes sense that it is. Now you do. Well, here's a question for you. How long do you think the M77 is? M77? Yeah. Oh, that must be about 25 miles? Nearly. It's 18. I've got on here, to be honest with you. But, just a quick... I didn't go out with a wheel and measure these myself, but a quick run from there. But some other... this is a really interesting thing to say, just at the end of this, about trunk roads. Think about every road in Scotland. Right, every road from the one right outside this house to a little dirt track to the massive dual 5-lane sections of the M8. Right, every road in Scotland. It's actually, if you think about all the miles, it's a huge amount. Trunk roads of all of these things, when considered, are actually only 10%. Yeah. Less than 10% of what it is if you look at the total mileage of them. So it would actually, it's quite staggering. I've got some statistics here of how many miles of trunk road there are in the UK, and I'll talk about Scotland. Well, sorry, I say UK, but Great Britain, because I'm not including Northern Ireland. Right, okay. Okay, so there is 247,500 miles of road in Great Britain. Okay. So just under 250,000 miles. Oh, jeez. 189,000 of them in England, 36,000 are in Scotland, and 21,000 in Wales. So we're in second place. We'll get there, to be honest with you. So that's kind of like 15% of the kind of the road mileage overall roads, are in Scotland, to be honest with you. And as I said earlier, the actual amount of trunk roads in Scotland is less than 10% of those 36,000 miles. So another trunk road fact that I've got here. Did you know this, Stuart? There are 4,970 trunk road structures in Scotland, from bridges, high mast lights and culverts, and its gross asset value is about 7.62 billion. Wow. Well, that's a lot, isn't it? So if you were Jeff Bezos, you could come here and buy every culvert, high mast light, gantry, bridge, and all these things. Who would want to buy anything else? And he'd be responsible for maintaining them. Yeah. He'd quickly relinquish them, to be honest with you. That's something to mention, actually, quickly about trunk roads. Yeah, interesting. It's not just the roads, it's the bridges
and everything that come with them. Yeah,
the high mast lighting we mentioned, that's a structure in its own right, and all these things. So it's not just the tarmac, so to speak. There's all this stuff that has to be considered. So the Scottish Government have quite a task on their hands looking after these things.
It's an undertaking, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And then our local authorities obviously pay and finance all our local roads.
So funded through the council tax. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's me about covered every road in Scotland, and that's me. Yeah, that's it done.
I think that's a good overview of some of the main roads in Scotland. There's some people probably, I mean, we're not even aware, or I certainly wasn't aware of some of these numbers, so I'm sure there'll be other people listening that'll be interested in that as well. Gives you a good idea for what we're going to be talking about going forward. In terms of some of the podcasts that we do have planned for this year, I know we will have one for the Keswick Bridge 40th anniversary in the summer. I think we're going to do one on the M8 again. It's time we revisited the M8 and had a good look at that.
One of the things, we have spoken about the M8 in Glasgow quite a lot, but we do need to talk about sections in the east.
Yep. And of course there'll be an array of other subjects as well. Like we've spoken about traffic studies before. We've spoken about signage types. We've had experts on. All these things, we have big plans.
Yeah,
for the podcast.
We'll also bring you up-to-date news on what's happening in local authority projects and things like that. I do enjoy this podcast where we kind of round up all the road improvements that have been happening, what we think of them. So,
and of course, if anybody has any topics they would like us to cover, feel free to get in touch, drop us a line, and we'll always be happy to.
Was it something to do with roads or transport, maybe? Yeah,
exactly.
We'll be able to dip our hand into that. So, I feel that we're at the beginning of a long journey.
Yes,
there's a lot to discuss and a lot to learn,
and hopefully lots of new listeners as well to come and enjoy what the product that we produce and enjoy producing and making every month. And it will remain a monthly podcast as well, with maybe some occasional specials.
Yes,
dotted in there.
But I do feel it's been a while since we sat down. I know we've been busy with this rebrand though, haven't we?
No, exactly. Now, all episodes of this podcast will be available wherever you find podcasts. Podbean is the primary platform that we use. That's where we publish through, but you'll also find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Amazon. Anywhere you find podcasts, you'll find us on there. Just search for Scottish Roadscast.
Yes.
And we'll be there.
Roadscast with an S in it.
Indeed. Be sure to leave us some reviews.
Yep.
Give us a rating as well. Help us spread the word. Tell your friends. This new
Tell
podcast
your family.
series here. Yep.
Yeah.
Recommend us.
Absolutely.
There's something for everyone here. You don't have to be an enthusiast to enjoy these podcasts.
Just simply, I would say, a user. Well, we all in a way benefit and use roads. So anyone and everyone is welcome to
Indeed.
As I always used to mention in ritualistic fashion on our old podcasts, don't forget to have a look on social media. We have a wonderful new regime going with our then and now posts that have come out. I personally think they're the best.
Oh, you would? Yes.
Duncan's got some fantastic ones from up north as well. Wojciech, he's got all the ones with the older vehicles and stuff like that. It's so cool. So go on Facebook, go on Twitter, go on Instagram, and get your fix from there and have a look. I think it's miles better what we're doing now.
Oh, it is. It really is. And welcome.
Not that it was bad in the past, but I can just see now more and more people are engaging and enjoying it.
A nice refreshing up of things. It's always good. And welcome to all the new followers. Hundreds of new followers since the rebrand across all social media platforms. So welcome to anyone who's maybe found this podcast through there. You're very welcome, and we hope you stick with us. But I think that's us for episode 1. That's it done.
Yes.
Here's to episode 2. And we'll
3,
see you for
4,
that,
5, and 6.
And we'll see you for that in a few weeks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks then. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.